So it turns out that it wasn't the far right at all that was responsible for Southport.
Oh, was it not?
No.
Oh.
No. We'll get to why.
Well, what do you know about that?
But before we do that, let's remind ourselves back on the 1st of August 2024 what they were telling us about Southport. Now remember, we weren't allowed to speculate on the ethnicity or identity of the killer, but that's not what we're going to be focusing on here. What we're going to be focusing on is the establishment's response to the people who were rioting. Now, I'm not for rioting. I'm not for people attacking hotels with people in and things like this, so I don't condone any of that. And this is Kier Starmer's response. So this is about a minute and a half long, but we're going to watch it because I want you to remember the tone of this.
Let me now turn to the actions of a tiny, mindless minority in our society. Because in the aftermath of this attack, the community of Southport had to suffer twice. A gang of thugs got on trains and buses, went to a community that is not their own, a community grieving the most horrific tragedy, and then proceeded to throw bricks at police officers who just 24 hours earlier had been having to deal with an attack on children in their community. And make no mistake, whether it's in Southport, London or Hartlepool, these people are showing our country exactly who they are. Mosques targeted because they're mosques. Flares thrown at the statue of Winston Churchill. A Nazi salute at the cenotaph. And so I've just held a meeting with senior police and law enforcement leaders where we've resolved to show who we are. A country that will not allow understandable fear to curdle into division and hate in our communities. And that will not permit, under any circumstances, a breakdown in law and order on our streets. Because let's be very clear about this. It's not protest. It's not legitimate. It's crime, violent disorder, an assault on the rule of law and the execution of justice. And so, on behalf of the British people, who expect their values and their security to be upheld, we will put a stop to it.
Thank you.
So
cheers.
You can see how angry he is at these foreign people to Southport, right? Now, look at
they got on a bus or a train.
They weren't from Southport, and the poor people of Southport grieving the murder of these children, and the poor police who have just been dealing with the aftermath of this unbelievable attack, they then come under a second attack by a bunch of foreign infiltrators, interlopers, who get on buses, get on trains, come over and then cause trouble. And so it's a double weight, so they're twice as guilty, and in fact, if anything, more guilty than the stabber, because we didn't talk about him in this little speech, did we? Right, we didn't have any information about him at this point. Nothing to talk about there, son. Even though he had Al Qaeda terror manuals and he had racial animus repeatedly shown in his online statements against white people, and the fact that Kier knew this by this point doesn't matter about that.
The far right thugs reacting to a slaughter of the innocents is the real problem.
Again, you can see his absolute. And the thing is, the tone of what he's saying. He is. Look at his face.
Yeah.
He is furious with you. Furious that you dare do anything. You disgusting far right invaders is what he's saying.
Probably working class as well.
Definitely working class, actually. But anyway, so this is from the 4th of August, a couple of days later, because of course the riots carried on, and he's basically like, look, if you're all far right, and I'm going to kill you, is basically Kier Starmer's attitude.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests, individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow, and convictions will follow. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves. This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery, and it has no place on our streets or online. Right now, there are attacks happening on a hotel in Rotherham, marauding gangs intent on law breaking, or worse, windows smashed, fire set ablaze, residents and staff in absolute fear. There is no justification, none, for taking this action, and all right-minded people should be condemning this sort of violence. People in this country have a right to be safe, and yet we've seen Muslim communities targeted, attacks on mosques, other minority communities singled out, Nazi salutes in the street, attacks on the police, wanton violence alongside racist rhetoric. So no, I won't shy away from calling it what it is, far-right thuggery. To those who feel targeted because of the colour of your skin or your faith, I know how frightening this must be. I want you to know that this violent mob do not represent our country, and we will bring them to justice.
So you couldn't have been more clear that he has ideologized this.
Yeah, it's not the families of those little girls.
No, it's
not worried about their
far-right infiltrators. They have an ideological position, they do Nazi salutes, and they're just intent on crime, and we, the British state, are going to crush you under our heel. And by the way, if you're not white, if you're part of a minority community, don't worry, we're going to cuddle you and make sure you're safe in the wake of an immigrant, second-generation immigrant murdering a bunch of children.
Everyone has the right to be safe. Apart from those families, apparently. That's too late, so forget about that now.
Yeah, that was in the past.
Basically.
So,
one of the things I find so obnoxious about this, other than just characterising normal people that are outraged by an atrocity as far-right thugs, is when he says directly, you will regret this.
Yeah.
Talking directly to you.
Yeah.
It's like I would say to Kier Starmer, no, I guarantee you that history will remember you as
this is 100%
as a traitor.
This is 100% the point at which his popularity is cratered. Yeah. This is exactly the wrong message, because nobody felt that this was actually what it was being portrayed as. Far-right organising tactics in Southport. 2 nights of violent protests following a knife attack. BBC analysis of activity on mainstream social media and in smaller public groups shows a clear pattern of influencers driving a message for people to gather for protests. But there is no single organising force at work. Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who uses the alias Tommy Robinson, which is when he say, organise hatred and then run away because Robinson was on holiday, right? Focused on spreading his message on social media platforms where he has a sizable following. So they are almost directly accusing Tommy Robinson and various others from inciting riots, right?
They've got such a boner for Tommy. It's mad.
He didn't do it.
Yeah, and he wasn't even in the country or whatever. It's like he's not...
But he wasn't like on Twitter, go out and riot and burn something. He didn't say that, right? And they don't say that he said it, but they kind of imply that that's what he was doing, right?
The BBC Verify, though, they're the absolute arbiters of truth.
I mean, they lie a lot.
Verify.
So anyway, then you had Mark Rowley from the Met Police saying, "Yep, this was largely racially motivated thugs." And the Guardian reporting about this 3 months ago. Key architect of riots after Southport was attacked was jailed for 7.5 years. So Andrew McIntyre made the mistake of almost all of them, which is pleading guilty. Yeah. They should there was a chap in Wales who was accused and arrested, and he pleaded non-guilty and was let go because he wasn't inciting riots. He wasn't inciting racial hatred. It's just any low-level social chatter. They were like, you, we got you. And they're obviously, these are people who, for the most part, I think, probably hadn't ever seen a lawyer before, and they were just given the government lawyer and told, look, it'll just be easier if you say no. And it turns out that was not true, right? You got Lucy Connolly in jail for 31 months or something, because she said something that I don't personally view as incitement to violence, but she pleaded guilty, and boom, she's in jail for 31 months now.
They're what Alexander Solzhenitsyn describes were called zeks, political prisoners.
Yes.
Simply guilty of wrong think or wrong speak.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Boom.
So the Judge McIntyre, Senator McIntyre, Judge Flewitt, said the defendant was, quote, prominent among people responsible for spreading misinformation after the Southport attack. So, okay, but what was the crime?
Didn't Nick Lowes spread misinformation about people?
He did.
People throwing acid in the faces of Muslims or something like that. I can't remember what it was. What did he say? Something.
No, it was something like that, yeah.
I can't remember the details.
It was something, but he had said something that was just demonstrably false and he had to retract it. But the campaign group, speaking of Nick Lowes, Hope Not Hate, said afterwards that, quote, McIntyre was a leading organiser and key architect of the riots, and the UK was a safer place because he was now in jail. It's like, that's not true. Anyway, we were obviously then subjected to massive amounts of propaganda. You had the counter protest, the anti-hate marchers who faced down and confronted the far right because the media kind of ginned up their own response to this. The establishment ginned up their own foot soldiers on the streets. You may remember the ethnic protests that took place where you had armed Muslims and various other ethnic minorities just hanging around the streets, some of them smashing things. Do you remember the one where there's just a white English guy walking past a pub and they were like, oh, it's a white English guy, and they beat him up, smashing him into the pub?
Yeah.
They
injured him really badly, didn't they?
Yeah, they injured him really, really badly, and that was just a racial attack. He wasn't part of a protest. He was just walking past. Yeah. He wasn't part of the protest, and yet that's what they did. And anyone brought to justice for that? Because that actually was a racially...
well, he was guilty of being white, wasn't he, really?
That's the problem. You can't even say you're English anymore, you see. Isn't that right, Stuart Lee? God, I hate him so much. Anyway, you've got the obvious people who Charlotte was summarising. It's like the propagandists on the left, Carol Vorderman, and the rest going Farage riots, as if Farage had anything to do with this, really. The Byline Times, led by donkeys, etc., etc. And we discussed all of this in our roundtable at the time, which is by far one of the best pieces of content on the website. So if you'd like to support us, go and watch that. The link will be in the description, where we essentially presaged everything that this report has come out and said. So this report has been done by the His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, which was established in 1856 to be the senior institution in policing.
So a venerable and august body.
I mean, it's literally the body that polices the police.
Right. Okay. What did they say?
It's second only to the Home Office in authority. So I guess we'll have to just take what they say as read, because they've spent all of this time investigating, and we have an inspection of the police response to the disorder. So they've done a very thorough inspection. So I'm just going to quote verbatim from it. Quote, during our inspection, we found no conclusive or compelling evidence that the 2024 disorder was deliberately premeditated and coordinated by any specific group or network. Most people who took part in the disorder lived locally. Before the 2024 disorder, many of them hadn't been convicted of disorder-related offences. The police arrested 147 children during this. Some of them as young as 11 years old. And the oldest person was 81, convicted for assault, apparently, 81-year-old. The events that led to their arrests mainly involved public expressions of disaffection, online and on the streets of UK towns and cities. So not assaulting the police, not calling for people to be killed, public expressions of disaffection.
Oh.
The murders of 3 young girls in Southport triggered these events. So it wasn't far-right ideology.
They weren't far-right thugs?
No, they did not bust themselves in. Huh. They weren't far-right. They were just local people who were really upset that this happened. Everything that Kier Starmer said, everything that Hope Not Hate said, everything the media said, all lies, according to this report.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Was Kier Starmer merely mistaken, or was he proactively lying?
Well, I think he's lying.
Yeah, of course he was.
But that's my opinion. They say they follow on and basically criticise the police response, saying, disappointingly, we found that the police service didn't sufficiently prioritise intelligence on disorder, even though strategic policing requirement includes it as one of their most significant threats to public safety. We also found the forces didn't always monitor, collect, classify, or use disorder-related intelligence effectively. This inhibits their ability to identify disorder-related risk at local, regional, and national levels, and is part of the reason the police service didn't react to changes in public sentiments before the disorder in Southport. So the police weren't competent. They weren't prepared. They weren't doing their job as their requirements suggested they should. But they did find that the police forces managed to arrest 1,804 people, and 1,071 people were charged with criminal offences. And remember, as they said before, most involved public expressions of disaffection. So for you not being happy with how things are done, the crappy police force still can stamp you down. They can still keep you under their heel.
In other words, you're confronted with policemen, you scream something about those poor girls, and that's it.
That's it. And there was one guy, who was literally charged with waving his hand at the police. Like, he was shaking a fist at them or something. Yeah. They're like, right, him, boom, got it. It's like, okay. And they think that the heavy-handed actions of the police, quote, undoubtedly had a deterrent effect. So the police force managed to suppress the public.
Brilliant.
By being unjust.
Slow hand clap. Yeah. Well done.
Exactly.
Yeah, well
done.
And
the police were saying this back in December, as you can see here.
Intelligence sharing within your own force area, but it works. I see people bent over backwards to help and support. Probably the one thing that I think does need a bit of reflection on is the narrative about what this was and what was going on, because certainly in the early days I attended one or two national meetings, and the conversation was about right-wing people maybe being whipped up, maybe a controlling mind, and this was about people travelling on trains, restricting travel because they were coming into areas and fomenting violence. That was not what I saw. The vast majority, in fact almost universally, everybody arrested in 169 arrests, they're all Teessiders. The furthest they hailed from was Darlington, which is probably 12 miles away, and they were people who lived in Teesside and who'd managed to kind of extend their horizons to Darlington. So this wasn't people coming in from outside, and I think maybe in the early days of this disorder, there's a lot of coverage in the media about what this was, but I think the disorder in each and every area was different, and it certainly didn't fit that narrative where it was happening for me. So.
You'll notice that this is Mark Webster back in the Home Affairs Committee, Chief Constable of Cleveland Police, on the 10th of December, talking about this. So it's not like this has been sat on. Not like they haven't known this for 5 months now, right? And it's just, again, he was saying at the time, their reports say this. Everything that Kier Starmer said, everything the media said, everything the activists were saying, just lies. Ideological lies. Is what they were thinking is, this must be our ideological enemies attempting some kind of uprising. And no, what the far right means in this context is working class local people who are afraid and are not happy that this is able to happen to their children. That's what this is. And they pathologize this, ideologize this as far right. And Kier Starmer literally said, we're going to come for you. We are going to get you in jail. You're going to regret this. I will make sure you regret this.
Guarantee.
Yeah. And it's like, that is evil. Absolutely evil. These were grieving, wounded people. And most of them didn't even actually commit what I would consider to be a crime. You were shouting at police or voicing your dissatisfaction online, as the police report says. Sorry, I don't think there should be a crime. And just because the establishment got freaked out because they have no control over the clients that they've brought into the country, and sometimes they'll just get a stab you and go kill a child, that's no excuse. Absolutely no excuse. These are political prisoners.
Yeah,
they all should be released, and Nigel Farage should have a commitment to that. We're going to make sure that we can get them out of jail. Like, I don't know what he can do, he probably can't do a presidential pardon or something, but we should be doing something, right? We should be talking about this in some way. But anyway,
it's interesting. A couple of quick points. The police intelligence gathering. What you mean, going on Facebook?
Yeah,
and Twitter.
Yeah, Telegram groups.
Yeah,
stuff like this. Actually interviewing the people they've arrested.
But no, you're absolutely right. What it is that the multicultural experiment, the concept of open borders and globalism, and the diversity as a strength, the net result of that at some point will be some kind of horror, like what happened at Southport.
Yeah. And it's happened over. It's not like Southport's the only one.
Either. And you are not allowed to react to it. You're not allowed.
Yeah.
You cannot react to it.
Yeah. You don't look back in anger, but
right.
Nudge Unit are in. They're working hard. The parents have already forgiven the murderers of their children.
And by react to it, even just shouting on the street, those poor girls or something of that order, that's not allowed. Yeah. The pressure cooker must be kept absolutely locked down.
You are far right.
And, once again, as I said in our last segment, that will only work up to a point. Reality doesn't care about your failed ideology in the end, in the final analysis.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.